want to talk to you guys about the importance of raising your kids, and in particular, not outsourcing your parenting. You see, the way the world's designed right now is kids are considered a valuable asset, like gold or silver or jewels. And I say that in a way that negative, demonic, satanic influences, they want to go after the kids first and foremost. Why is that? Well, if you think about it, kids are still developing, so they're learning, meaning that their minds are still plastic. They're still absorbing things like a sponge. Obviously, when you're a kid, when you're younger, you're dependent on an authority figure, on an adult, a superior. And then, of course, the younger an entity can get a hold of a kid's mind, that just means that potentially if they live a long life, then you have them for a long, long time. One example I can think of is if you think of tobacco, cigarette corporations. I mean, for the longest time in human history, they aimed for kids as their initial demographic. If you look back at the history of like Joe Camel cartoons and magazines and comic books, Fred Flintstone cartoons where they're smoking cigarettes, I mean, it should be pretty obvious looking in hindsight who their key audience was. They're not aiming for a 38-year-old man or a 50-year-old woman. They're aiming for little kids. Therefore, they go through cartoons. And Satan's influences, his demonic forces, will try to go that route because if they can get a susceptible, usually naive and dependable child, then they will take that and they'll run it to the bank. So getting back to my larger point is you want to avoid outsourcing your parenting as much as possible. More examples. We're all glued to these devices, phones, TVs, etc. I know there are a lot of parents out there that are working two-income households, or they're working a lot of hours to make ends meet just because life is just generally more expensive now. Well, that means the more that you're working for significantly less pay for the stuff that you have, the stuff that you for lack of a better term, covet, that means less time with your family, less time at the dinner table, less time together in the living room or the den, less time joining events or going to fellowship. Even just slightly larger picture, less time amongst your neighbors because you're too busy working for more stuff that you don't need. Meanwhile, while you're there being super busy, a lot of other entities are getting influence on your kids, for better or for worse. School, for example. Kids are in school, I would assume, 7 to 8 hours a day? And they could be teaching your kids a litany of things. And this is where the whole outsourced parenting, where you got to step in and nip it in the bud. A simple thing that you can do if you're sending your kids to school is every time they come home from school, you basically got to turn into an inspector, an investigator. What did you do in school today? What happened in school today? And don't just accept superficial answers. Good. School was fine. What you do in school today? Nothing. That's not acceptable. I need to know what classes you took, what happened in those classes, who did you talk to, what's going on with your friend groups in school, what clubs are going on, what social events, all these things. I know you're not going to get 100% of every little detail. A lot of times my kids come home and they have trouble remembering what they just did in school, even as they just got off the bus. But the point is, you want to let your kids know that, hey, everything that school filters through runs through me. And if they're teaching something that's unethical, unbiblical, sexually immoral, financially immoral, socially immoral, whatever it is, I want to know. Run it by me. If there's something not going on that's to the satisfaction, first and foremost, of God, but going a little further, not sufficient or not helpful to the family, I got to do something about it. And I don't know what that is. Run for school board, talk to the principal, talk to the teacher XYZ who taught this thing or said this thing, and nip it in the bud. But you have to be willing to do those kind of things in order for your kids to not be outsourced and, for lack of a better term, farmed out. That's what you have to do as a parent. Now, I'm saying all that, knowing that, yes, it's exhausting, and yes, it does take a lot of time in instances, but it's you caring about your kids and not letting other influences get all the credibility for raising your kids without you having any sort of input, because that's what these entities want. You know, YouTube, Netflix, these social media sites, they want to raise your kids too, because they have advertisers that they're trying to collect, and they're trying to keep your kids' eyes glued to those screens, to those tablets, to those phones as much as they can. And I know you can't filter every single thing without just flat out banning it in your household, but they'll try to get that way too. Through commercials on TV shows. They'll try to advertise a litany of things, that drunkenness and drug use and sexually immoral behavior and anger and malice. All these things right in front of your kids' eyes constantly. And your solutions really are to, one, monitor it 24/7 to the point where it drives both of you crazy. Two, completely shun it or put a heavy restriction on it. Or three, give your kids wise biblical discernment about what to expect, what's right, what's righteous, what's unrighteous, and be clear with them. Be straight up with them. To be honest, guys, as you go through life, you're not going to be able to be there 100% for your kids. Even the most helicopter-like of helicopter parents is not going to be able to influence every single thing that your kids do, every single thing they say, every single thing that they think, every single person that they hang around. At some point, you got to cut the umbilical cord. You know, they're going to get older, get into middle school, high school, have their friend groups, going to become adults, maybe go to college, move to a different city, get a job somewhere, move out of the house, hopefully. Hopefully they don't live in your basement until, they're like 40-something years old, eating Hot Pockets and playing video games. But at some point, they're going to be in a world where you're not going to have direct influence and be hovering over them. So what you need to be doing on a daily basis is giving them those foundations of right and wrong. Give them those good biblical lessons. Have them prepared for any situation they step into. So when they go off to college and there's a party going on and everyone's getting drunk out of their minds, that they know that there's discernment to have. Hey, don't get drunk. Don't make stupid decisions. Don't end up doing something sexually indecent and ruining your life and ruining somebody else's life, or even preventing a life from even coming into the fold because of rash, emotionally unsound decisions. You're probably not going to say it in such precise words, but you want to be teaching these lessons every day. So yeah, you want to comb through everything that your kids go through, which, by the way, is not a violation of their rights. If you're their parents, if you're their guardian, if you are, they're the fruit of your loins, then you have a right to all that stuff. Something that I tell my kids from time to time when they say, that's my game, that's my toy, I'm going to my room. And I just make it a point to remind them that it's not your stuff, it's not your room, it's my room. I don't see your name on the mortgage. Whenever this bill or this payment comes in, I don't see your name on it. So that's my room, my house, my electricity, etc., but I just let you use it. In the same way, grand scheme, everything around us is owned by God. And he's nice enough to let us be managers of it, to be stewards of it. So you should look at everything that way from your perspective, and then teach that to your kids to respect those things. But without going too far into a tangent, you want to teach them those ground rules of what's righteous, having respect for others, having respect for property, having respect for people's privacy and personal business, operating with discernment, not lashing out, not being run by your emotions, not being outraged by things that really you shouldn't be outraged about. You know, how to be frugal, how to be thrifty. You know, these are all things that a parent should be the basis of first and foremost. And time shouldn't be an excuse either. Yes, your kids are going to be at school 7, 8 hours a day, depending on where you go to school at. And you might, because of work and other obligations, only see them for a couple hours a day. But you make those couple hours count. When your kids are in your proximity, get off your phone, wake up from your nap, stop being too busy and too occupied, and spend some time talking to them, again, about their day, what went through their filter at school and wherever they were at. Teach them lessons, have talks with them. Take advantage of the time that you do get. If you're going on a drive somewhere, if you're going on a trip somewhere, if you're doing an activity together, maybe you're doing a chore or building something together, those are perfect times to talk. Those are perfect times to teach lessons. Those are perfect times to just kind of vent everything that's going on. You have to do it though. You can't let somebody else or something else raise your kids, because I guarantee you at some point, some evil, ungodly, demonic, unbiblical influence is going to it's going to creep in. And if you haven't given your kids any sense of what is and isn't righteous, they're going to sneak in. That's what the devil looks for. He looks for a slip, a hole in your armor, and he will take full advantage of it. And unless your kids know first and foremost, get behind me, Satan, because this could lead down to a bad path, that'll lead down to a bad path, then you're going to be in for trouble. The whole family's going to be in for trouble. The other thing I would remind you folks is, if you're a parent, if you're a father, mother, even if you're a mentor or a father figure, I want to remind you that how you carry yourself also rubs off on your kids. If you preach one thing and act another way, your kids notice that kind of stuff. Your kids can't see you in worse conditions. Your kids should never see you drunk. They should never see you high. They should never see you cursing or belligerent. They should never see you carrying on, lazy, lackluster behavior. Like, these are things like your kids should never see from you. There are things that you can help, like if you were legitimately sick, you had a serious illness or something like that. But all things considered, your kids shouldn't, when your image pulls up in your kid's head, it shouldn't be, my mom or my dad was drunk all the time, or was high all the time, or they were, promiscuous with all these people. Those shouldn't be the image that your kids have of you. Because if they see it from the outside world, and trust me, those images are out there. All those indecent images are out there in our society. And then they see it from their own flesh and blood, their mom and dad. They're going to think that's right. So you have to carry yourself in a biblically sound manner. Your kids see that. They observe it. It rubs off on them. I can't think of how many, catchphrases or, mannerisms that I do that I don't even think my kids are looking at or paying attention, that they copy me verbatim. And hopefully it's all the good stuff. But if you're constantly showing them negative, harsh, bad stuff, that's going to rub off on them. So yes, you're going to be the main influence for your children, but be a good influence. Show them the light. Show them the light of the world within yourself, within the Holy Spirit. Don't carry yourself like all these pagans out here. Okay, all these people that don't fear God, all these fools that say there is no God, and their actions accordingly show that. You don't want that to be the main source of where your kids get their information. The final thing I want to say about that is, when it comes to being biblically sound, one very important thing is that you're not shy about it. Your kids know that God sets the template. He sets the standard of how you act, how you think, how you talk. And again, not the culture at large, not some other influence. And if you're embarrassed and you're ashamed of Jesus, if you keep, don't talk that Bible stuff out loud, but they hear you talking loudly with curse words, and they see you smoking cigarettes and getting drunk and carrying on like this and that. If you do that loudly, but then Jesus is just a hush thing, maybe we just show up for a little bit on Sunday and that's it. We don't talk about it and we don't pray together and we don't read scripture together. If that's how you operate, you're going to be in a world of trouble and you're setting your kids on a bad path. So again, in conclusion, don't outsource your parents. Don't let anyone or anything that is of the world, that is of the devil, raise your kids. Because trust me, they're going to try. You be the first stopping point of information, of wisdom, of discernment, of love and structure for your kids. And whatever time you get with your kids, whether it's all day, whether it's, a few hours, whatever it's an hour, even if you only get to spend 30 minutes with your kids, carry yourself in a way that holds weight. Because that 30 minutes, hour, whatever it is, should have infinitely more impact than the 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever hours that they spend at school, at work, around their friend groups, at college, watching TV, whatever. Okay? So set the foundation. Don't let your parenting be outsourced. Protect your kids, watch your kids, teach them. God bless you guys. Peace.